greetings and a very good evening to everyone that has joined us today. And thank you very much for taking your time to join us today. But without further ado, without further ado, let me just ask Dr. Voyo to open for us and welcome all the relevant speakers and the people that have made this day possible for us today. So, Dr. Voyo, if you can just open for us.
Yeah, man. Lwandile, thank you so much. Thank you, facilitator, for this beautiful introduction to what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be basically giving an overview, but again, also welcome the people who took their time this evening to come and join us on this very, very critical topic and conversation. Welcoming all the civil society people who are in the audience, the corporate. We understand that there are also other advocacy organizations that have joined us. I think there's even a gentleman who is a professional, a gentleman who was playing football before for one of the teams in South Africa in PSL, who says that he is taking the baton to take charge of the mental health of young soccer players. That's very great. We also acknowledge that we do have the speaker of the provincial parliament in the Western Cape, Mr. Masizole Mangasela. With all of that, and also the people from the civil society, thank you for joining us for this occasion. We do know that we've got a big burden on our shoulders. Men are killing themselves and suicide every day. And South Africa does not have a model to address that. So ranging from our healthcare model, we continue to sit on the other side of our desks and wait for men to come through. To say that, listen, these are the problems, and it's not going to happen. So we are here, and the approach of today is that we are telling a story, and telling a story, and we want people to relate to the stories that we're going to be telling, and storytelling and relatability. If Mr. Chair Lwandile, you are a CEO of a company X, that's a billion ranging company in Africa, and you are able to tell your story here, people automatically relate to you. And we'd like to make a disclaimer really to say that we know that wounds are going to be open once we start talking. And of course, this is our goal. We want to capture the people to say that it is okay to speak. And even outside these conversations, we want to carry this into the future with everybody who's here, with the corporate, with the people who are having the advocacy voices going forward. And the model really of our conversation is that we're going to be listening to at least 3 people tell their story, and we are going to learn from them. And where they are now has been a substance of what they've learned from the story, in fact, to drive them. We also acknowledge that we've got a legend in our midst, Mr. Sello Maake, who is a great storyteller. And we know he has recently released The Voice, which is a very absolutely great theater play that was there for gender-based violence. He's going to be telling us and giving us his heart. He's one of our legends in the story of South African telling. So we hold him as a big storyteller. And with that, Lwandile and many other people that we need to acknowledge as we go, I will really give over to you to really take us through. And I understand that Brasilo is going to be the next person who is going to be joining us. Mr. Balfour, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Voyo. I think, like I did say earlier, a warm welcome to everyone that has joined us today. This again, I think what is important for us today is to listen attentively. And I ask for everyone that is on the platform, that is on the call, that is listening, that we act and we do so with love and compassion. Now, this is a storytelling exercise that we're embarking on today. And again, it's about not just storytelling, but relatable stories to the issues that are affecting us as men within our societies and communities. So I ask you to listen, I ask you to take notes, but equally important to that, we're going to have a Q&A session. So I want you to jot down the questions that you feel that you need to be addressed and answered. And then we are going to look at the commentary section, and then I'm going to be taking those questions. We are going to have our speaker, our first speaker and main speaker as such. I want to say to him, for the purpose of what I'm going to say next, I want to say Brasilo. Now, I'm saying Brasilo because you're going to see when he puts on his camera, I saw when we were doing the dry run edit, I saw the curious case of Benjamin Button. This is a guy that does not seem to be aging. You know, we were young kids in the streets, and when we were growing up, and he was old already. And he seems to be aging backwards. So maybe after this session, you can also share with us as to how do you do that? What cream is he using to make him age backwards? Brasilo, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Lwandile. And thanks for the, and let me thank the BMF for the opportunity for actually providing this much needed platform, you know, to actually converse about this very important issue. You know, I don't know about not aging, because one thing, you know, what I can say to you is that ask my niece, they will tell you a better story. Or you probably are having me frozen in your mind and you don't want me to age. But listen, gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank everybody who has taken the time, you know, to have this conversation. You know, I think, you know, by creating this platform, I think we are actually answering something that Amos is there in, you know, in one of his great poems, Return to My Native Land. He writes that, and I quote, "Beware my body and soul, beware above all of crossing your arms and assuming the sterile attitude of a spectator. For life is not a spectacle. A sea of griefs is not a proscenium, and a man who wails is not a dancing bear." And I think, you know, by taking this, creating this platform, that we should, you know, converse about these things. We are not assuming that sterile attitude of a spectator, and we're realizing that whatever is happening in our lives now is not a spectacle. Vio has just alluded to the fact that there are a lot of suicides that are happening, you know, among a lot of Black men, and you know, with somehow, I mean, with this, what is at the end of the year or beginning of the year, when the results come through, young people also, you know, get caught up in the wave. You know, and basically, yes, it is true that this sea of griefs is not a proscenium, and a man who wails is not a dancing bear. And we are taking on and saying something has to be done. My journey has been a very interesting one. I've been, you know, provoked or, you know, set in motion into interrogating issues on gender-based violence. You know, and in my interrogation on issues of gender-based violence, I remember having this opportunity of working with a group of young men who were part of an NGO that had men as partners, you know, in the fight against domestic violence. And we created a play which we called Komeng, you know. And Komeng, basically, I mean, for those who know Sesotho, Komeng is actually the Sotho word of Ugyoluga or Ugentabeni, you know. And what we did was use the rite of passage process as a metaphor, you know, for a psychological initiation, you know. And I think, you know, and that had to deal with how men can take pain, you know, and we know that pain is such it's a cause of a whole lot of things. You know, people go or experience PTSD, it has to do with some kind of trauma, you know, and this trauma, you know, can be emotional and it can be physical almost, and leading to having, you know, affecting the mind, you know. And so what we did, and I remember, you know, one of the lines of the play, in fact, one of the end lines of the play was that today, you know, we have removed the foreskin of the mind. And today we have discovered that we are human beings first and men after. And I think for me, the discovery of our humanity, for me, it is a start. We have a very amazing philosophy, you know, of Ubuntu, you know, and by recognizing ourselves in the other, it's one of the, I mean, it's what makes life happen. You know, as a human being, you are such a communal and social animal, you know, and it has to do with the fact as well that, you know, if the world would end and somebody is left and only one person is left, with that one person, one thing that you have somebody to tell the story, you know. And the thing is, telling of stories is such an amazing thing. I remember one director who had a very huge influence on me, once wrote in the annual, he was a co-founder of the Market Theatre. And in the annual report, in answering why theatre, he starts with a lovely preamble where he says, there are those who believe that we are created in the image of God. And he says, there are those also who believe that God created man because he loves listening to stories. And he says, if we believe as they do, then we understand why we love listening to stories. And because it is from stories that we learn, you know, or, you know, we learn, you know, how to maybe chart through life. And stories always, I mean, if we remember the stories that were told by our grannies, all those stories that would be about animals, but they will be teaching us something about the human condition. And storytelling really goes a long way. And me being, you know, in the space that I'm in as an actor, I've always seen an actor as a mirror of society. I remember one great actor who I used to admire as a young man. His name is John Ledwaba. He once said that an actor is an instrument for mind liberation. And that liberation is actually created by when you can see yourself in the mirror and see that maybe, and see where you need to fix yourself as a person, you know. And, you know, and as we deal with these issues of manhood and masculinity, there is this beautiful anecdote that I love telling. And it's an anecdote of a carpenter who's working in his workshop with his 7-year-old in there. And while the carpenter is working, you know, the young boy keeps on asking him, hey, Papa, what is this? Papa, what is that? You know, and he's distracting the old man from working. To distract the boy, the father, what does he do? He takes a picture of the map of the world, which is on the wall. He removes it, tears it into pieces, throws it on the floor, gets sellotape, and says to the boy, put this map together. And, you know, that, distracted the boy for a while. And then after a while, you know, the boy comes back and he says, you know, having put the map together, he says, Papa, look, you know, I have put it together. And this moral of the story is that, you know, behind the map of the world is a drawing of a man's head. And the lesson to be learned there is, if man can put his head together, the world would be a better place to be. And I think that leads us to, you know, this very, you know, impertinent conversation of dealing with mental health, because everything is concentrated in the head. And once we can even begin to understand how the mind thinks and how to, you know, to help it, you know, and what is it that we must do to regulate our emotions, regulate our minds, you know, issues of gender-based violence definitely will diminish, you know, and we will actually begin to start building a very sound society, you know. And, you know, I am really like looking forward to actually being, I mean, you know, contributing, you know, in this space through the arts, you know. And, you know, if I would use another quote that I always find very amazing, it's the quote that speaks about culture. And it says, Culture will be each and individual's understanding of his community and his commitment to it. The artist's job is to make the process public, to create public images, literal or figurative, in signs, sound, and movement of the human condition, public images in which our species recognizes itself and confirms its identity. As a people, we come a long way. And I guess the PTSD that has been caused by colonialism and, apartheid has left, I think our psychological landscape really, really, really damaged. And it is our duty, the present generation to actually, pause, and say, what is it that we need to fix so that we don't pass on what, we have actually inherited due to this, horrific systems of colonialism and apartheid. As a people, using the arts for me is, setting up that mirror and making sure that we fix ourselves. And as artists, that is what we have to do. And when we do that, we have to make sure that we tell authentic stories. We tell stories, that basically make sure that, any person who's watching that story finds a reason, or even answers, for his family life and his business problems, and also, a good show must also make sure that he makes a person who's asking questions about the immortality of his soul and the order of the universe. And one of the amazing things that if you've made a good show, it will actually give comfort to a drunkard who walked in and walked in to listen to the story, and I think the signs and the symptoms of mental health, somehow we are always looking for maybe big ones, but the silent killers are depression, stress, difficulty to communicate one's emotion. And I know, for a fact, and I've had that personal experience, that sometimes even as a person who is not in a very good relationship, that leads to depression. And that depression and that inability to articulate yourself in the space that you are in probably always has a way of leading to very dire, consequences, but I hope, going forward, what the platform that BMF is doing, has put on, is going to be a platform that will give us a launch pad into rectifying our society socially, because at times we tend to think as if, or believe that we live only one aspect of life, and yet we are living a very, wholesome and circumspect life, which involves our spiritual side, our emotional side, and even our physical side. And I just look forward to being, a contributor in this space. Other thing that, that makes us, I think, as actors somehow very special, is that, as an actor, you are one person who's endowed with an ability to experience life and things in a very deep way, and things that sometimes are just obscure to the average person, and our duty is just to make sure that we interpret this life in such a way that people who are watching the show are, given an image of themselves and, looking at the possibility of, fixing themselves up, and storytelling goes a long way. And as we tell our stories, we open up our hearts. And sometimes it is when you tell your story that you even experience a certain kind of healing. Because as you're trying to, when you tell a story, your story, in trying to make the other person understand it, you are almost making yourself understand what you are going through. And yes, it is true. It is time for storytelling. And also it is time to recognize that, you know, being vulnerable, because that is something, one of the biggest fears that as men, we scared to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability, when it is suppressed, under the pressure cook, something volatile basically comes across, or, well, it blows up. And when things blow up, nothing alive is actually left around us. So yes, thank you very much, Buyo, for bringing this conversation, you know, and also for even highlighting, most importantly, the whole thing of storytelling, because it is through storytelling that we will reach multitudes. You know, when you look at how, for instance, we gather around the television, you know, the television has actually now becomes our fireplace, you know, and it's not only just television, you know, our phones are also, you know, little fireplaces where we go and get stories. And at the present moment, we cannot say we cannot talk about these issues. Technology, look at what it has done now, you know. I'm not a Christian to the core, or an ardent Christian, but one of the amazing things that when they talk about creation is that, you know, God created man so that he must have domain over the land and animals that lives beneath the sea. And through technology already you can see that man is having domain or dominion over the world. And let's use technology, let's use our ability to tell stories and to be able to hear them and remove stigmatization around issues of mental health. Thank you very much.
Brasilo.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'm trying to watch the comments and see if maybe someone is asking a question, but just a bit of a comment from my side. And I think it's very important. One of the reasons that you and the foundation are with us today is that we're looking to the prominent people within our societies and communities, because these are the people that we look up to, right? And if a person that is prominent or deemed prominent in our societies, take you, for instance, as an actor, we've seen you in our screens every day, we see you in our screens, you know, over and over again. And if someone tells a story with your kind of resume, and now this is the person that is suffering from the same thing that I'm suffering from, and I see that this person is dealing and coping with this thing. And I think it's very important that we do share these stories. And what is more important is that these stories need to be as authentic as possible, because that's how they get to help that other person. You mentioned something about before fixing ourselves, we need to fix the mirror. You know, and fixing the mirror is so that you can be able to reflect, because nothing can be fixed if you do not reflect. So you need to reflect first, and therefore you can be able to move forward. But I think I haven't seen any comments from the comment section, but from my side, right, with all that you have said to us now this evening, you spoke about, you know, briefly, and that's the traditional myth that we come from, you know, we come from the village. How do we then, in your own words, and I'm sure that the speakers will get to it, but how do you, in your own words, suggest that we debunk this narrative? I think you're on mute.
We can basically debunk this narrative by just making sure, because, you know, somehow what we have always done is that when we looked at issues, we have always, you know, said things are just black or white. And we have even looked at, you know, I'm losing light here. We have actually said, looked at things as black and white. Just give me a moment. I just want to get light on.
Not a problem.
Yeah. No, those many buttons. Yeah, just press them all and just something will. Yeah, much better. You see, and there was,
Much
and
better.
God said there was light. There, we've got light. We always look at things as black and white. In my journey, for instance, dealing with, the play that I spoke about, Coming, it was, I basically, focused on just having men interrogate themselves, but the issue is not only just about men, because men don't live in isolation. They live in relation to, let's say, the women folk around them, and I think somehow now, and also even in telling stories, we've got to find a way where we actually begin to show the grayness that is there in life, and now take the responsibility of us, removing the different strands that creates this gray space, and understand it. Because by almost just pathologizing, what, let's say, Black men go through or what they are, we come from a very, 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 very brutal system. And somehow we got to accept that there is a brutalization that has basically been passed on from generation to generation. And we know that mental health, or in fact, many of us don't even know that mental health can be passed on through hereditary, through the DNA. And now, how do we know that this trauma that we have suffered in the centuries that have gone past, is not, affecting us now? And the challenge now is to really go into analyzing human behavior and human condition in such a way that we understand what makes things to be the way they are, and begin to learn how to basically, either if you have to learn how to calm yourself down, how to think things through, but also, if ever you can't speak to your mother, or even your wife, have your friends as, a soundboard, but again, also, what kind of friends are you having to actually have a very good soundboard that is not going to enhance the state that you are in, but basically helps you to analyze and break it down and find solution, So the most important thing is that, that statement will always be there. Because one thing also that we know is that, sometimes people, when the relationship starts, all is well, but along the way, they stop listening to one another. And once that happens, expect nothing but chaos.
Yeah. Priscilla, I'm watching the comment section. I want to tie two questions here. The first one seems to be a person who is a bit frustrated, and he makes reference to issues at home with the wife and being controlled by the wife, and therefore leading to these instances. But maybe before we get to that, there's another comment that says, firstly, I want to thank you for creating this incredible platform. And secondly, how do we, as women, best support the men in our homes and communities at large? So I'm tying it to the earlier one, which I just spoke about now, where the guy is showing frustration about being controlled at home by the wife. I'm assuming that is married, because he's saying the wife. So how do women then support men in these issues?
And communication is where it should start, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things is that also, do we know how to communicate? And I think that is why, for instance, we've got to actually write stories that actually shows how actually even communication, breaks down amongst people or amongst ourselves. But when communication breaks down, how do we now pause? Because one of the things that we maybe at times we fail to have, or even to utilize, is that ability to regulate, or to say, I'm not in control of myself here. So let me pause. And if ever you can't, deal with it by yourself, find somebody to be able to speak to.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I think the speakers are listening. I think there's another serious question here that I have, and this question says, how do we deal with alcoholism? And I'm assuming that the person is struggling with alcoholism, so that's the question that they're putting to us. And he goes on to say that he's based in Cape Town. So that's the question. How do we deal? I mean, we know that that's one of the biggest challenges in our society and community. How do we deal with such issues?
And I think the experts, you know, in the psychological space, you know, will expatiate even a bit more on this, because some of this in alcoholism basically is a symptom at times that a person uses to numb. It's self-medication at points, you know, and a person who drinks, the problem is not really just alcohol. It is what is it that makes them to want to numb the pain. You know, for me, that is what it is.
And I think here's another question, and this is something that I was actually thinking about today. So for some people that are having mental issues, I know that, I mean, it's sometimes for them it's eating right, so getting balanced diet, getting enough sleep, exercise, meditation, the limit of or avoiding the use of alcohol and drugs. But I think the question now that I'm looking at, it says due to mental health being either severe or on a spectrum, when do we realize we've got a problem versus having a bad day or a week or a bad month? And I think this speaks to the symptoms, right? So how do you then pick up that you are having a mental health issue as opposed to just having a bad day at work or a bad week or a bad month? What are the symptoms?
You know, one thing that I actually just was doing a little research just recently on issues of mental health, and I discovered as I was reading some of the signs, you know, to pick up whether one is going through a mental issue. You know, they actually even become physical, you know. And I remember, you know, I mean, when I look at London, because I spent about 5 years, but I left for London when I was going through a very traumatic time in my life, you know. And at that time, I was, you know, I think I just turned 40. Yeah, just, you know, 2001. I just turned 40. And it was in reading the signs of mental health issues, you know, that I realized that because I probably was going through some kind of depression, I found myself having knee problems. And I think once that space, I went out of that, you know, emotional space, the knee problem actually went away. And there are many signs, and that is why I think some of the experts, I think they will articulate this much better. But some of the signs are actually physical. Like, you know, as you're speaking, people, you know, have low appetite, they can't sleep. And once you realize, oh, those are the signs, seek help.
Thank you so much, Basilo. And I think as we progress with the program and the agenda, I think we'll find answers as to where do we go, what do we need to do to address all these issues. But I think from my side and from everyone, on behalf of everyone, we would like to thank you very much for gracing us with the presence, you and your foundation. But before I let you go, I just want to align with my panel and see if maybe by a show of hand, if someone has got something that they'd like to say to you. So
okay.
Yeah. I know that I've got Ompo, I've got Ovuyo, I've got Olita, you know, I've got Reverend. So I'm referring to you guys. So if you've got anything to say before we let him go.
Can I come in if possible?
The floor is yours.
Yes. I think I will be able to deal with a whole lot of what Brasello has mentioned, especially about the other questions that are very technical in terms of how do you deal with alcoholism? How do you see the science, especially when I come to a little bit of, I think Brasello was very spot on so many issues that he has mentioned there in terms of his issues related to depression that he went through. So we'll be able to deal with it a little bit later on my presentation down there. So for now, I would like to pause so that we shouldn't take that much of a time, because I know he has a little bit of a limited time. But we really want to appreciate what Brasello has said and set the tone. I think from here moving forward, Brasello will have a very great relationship, and will also give you what we will have come up with as the BMF in terms of also the other role players like you and the other people. What is it that we're going to come up with at the end of this particular session? We'll let you know, and maybe we'll have a stretch plan where we can be able to say what is the way forward moving forward from here, from this particular webinar. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity, Black Management Forum, Black Power, Amanda. Of
I think without wasting any time, we now move on to the next item on our program. So we've got the next item is being vulnerable is the new strong. Now we've got a list of panels here that are going to be dissecting this for us and making us understand what does it mean being vulnerable is the new strong. What does that mean in great detail? When I was having the dry run with everyone earlier today before this webinar started, I'm going to introduce Reverend Sophie Dangoku. I was told what I was looking for Reverend. So I'm going to hand over to you, Reverend Sophie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Also want to specifically thank Brasello for starting us off and sharing deeply his journey as well as a man, not as a celebrity, not as somebody on the television, but as a man. So I relate to most of what he shared, and I thank him for that. Also want to thank BMF for affording us the opportunity and the platform. And I want to greet my fellow panelists as well as the colleagues on the call. As mentioned, I'm Phumzile Stofile. I want to share my own personal story, my journey as a man, as a father, as a boy at some point, as a child, in the few minutes that have been allocated. I'm currently a pastor. I am leading a congregation. I am leading other pastors as well in this province of the Western Cape. I am one of the international facilitators of a program called Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. We're dealing with issues of gender wounding and trauma amongst both genders. And my story begins when I was a child. I was born in prison. My mother was selling dacha, drugs, and she was arrested at some point, and she was pregnant, me, and she gave birth to this man that you see now in prison. So that's where my journey of trauma began. My mother, because at that time, she did not have the privilege of sending me home to my parents or to her parents during the apartheid years. So she stayed with me in prison. And so I grew up there, spent 2 years in prison. And then at age 2, my 2 aunties, they came and they fetched me from prison. And I was with them. And it was another phase of abandonment, from being born in prison to being abandoned, growing up with the aunties, extended family, without a bond with your mother, and growing up in that environment until the age of 7, where I experienced another form of trauma, which was sexual violation. I was sexually violated by older boys. I was raped, sodomized, and that continued for quite some time until I developed the courage to tell what was happening. And instead of my mother, who I did not have a relationship with at the time, instead of sympathizing with me, she saw me as someone who asked for it. So I was beaten. I was never consoled. I was actually beaten for being part of the trauma that happened in me. So I grew up with that trauma, and it shut me off psychologically. It was a trauma that informed my neuropsychosocial development. And it made me very hard. It distorted a lot of things in me. It distorted my view of maleness, that if you are a male, you have to stand on your own. You don't trust nobody. It made me to be a man who had a distorted view of sex, that sex is never gentle, sex is aggressive, and for you to do it, there must be cries, there must be moaning, there must be all of those sorts of things. It also distorted the view of family and friendship. I never had friends, true friends, and I think that grew with me, where you have acquaintances, but not true friends, people that you can disclose to. And till this day, I mean, my breakthrough of telling my story only happened about a year ago during COVID, where I was exposed to this international platform, engaging with people from overseas via Zoom, where I felt safe enough, in my space because of the beauty of technology. That's where I began to share my story, my gender river of life, and to like-minded people who were able to be vulnerable. So I found my strength through being vulnerable. And I was amongst the people who themselves were vulnerable. So I developed courage to share my story. And I believe that I'm not the same Reverend Phumzile Stofile that I was before. I relate even better with my own children. I relate even better with my fellow pastors. I'm now facilitating this gender equity and reconciliation, where we are reconciling these two genders, the male gender and the female gender, but with a specific focus to men, where we are sharing our story, because some of ourselves, including me, we bleed on people. You are wounded, but you are healing others. You are not yet healed even yourself. So I'm still in the process of healing, but this process is so wonderful because I can relate to the stories of men. I've seen men breaking up, respectable men, respected men with titles, with positions, but they've never had a platform to be vulnerable. So that's my story, and that's my journey. And my take home out of this is that, COVID did not help things. COVID actually made things even worse. That due to COVID, or because of COVID, most of us, including myself, we have lost a lot of things that we thought were defining what masculinity is. The cars were repossessed. Bank accounts are at minus, sometimes at zero. And all of those things were the things that were defining what masculinity is. And these are adding the trauma on the already, stretched man who had his own childhood trauma that he's dealing with. But through understanding and navigating life and asking serious questions and trying to be amongst like-minded people, forming new alliances and allegiances amongst men, which are difficult because most men are wearing a mask out there. Everybody's perfect, everybody's got it. Very few people are vulnerable enough that you can relate to. And I'm calling upon us as men, especially Black men, that we really need to relook at masculinity. We really need to relook at these things that we think define what masculinity is. And often we have been proven wrong because they don't. They don't define who and what masculinity is. Masculinity is found in being vulnerable, in being able to share your story so that you can also touch other men. So I want to say, Mr. Balfour, that I am in this journey as a man, as a pastor, and I am in this journey as a leader of society. I've taken off my mask. I'm tired of wearing a mask. It does not help me. I've seen many people whom I've looked up and thought they've got it together, and only realized that what I see is not always true. So I want us as men, I think it's time for us to come out. It's time for us to come out and be real and be true to ourselves. It's tough out there. It's tough. It's okay even to cry. I've never, I don't know when last I've cried. Since I've started sharing my story, crying has been my daily thing, because I was ashamed of sharing tears. I was ashamed of crying as a man, because then it says I'm not man enough. You know, you can't share tears if you're a man. You're not man enough. You can't share tears if you're a pastor. You know, you are a leader standing before men in the church, you know, but I've found that sharing those tears and dealing with those trauma actually make you strong. So thank you so much, Mr. Balfour. I think my time is up, but that's my story. That's my journey that I've shared, that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is a position of strength. Thank you.
Reverend, thank you very much for your story. Much appreciated. And again, you know, to exactly what you were saying, and the reason we're having these conversations is not to make you take off your mask, but what is equally important to that is for people that are going through these issues can listen and be encouraged to start sharing and talking about their issues, and maybe follow your route to how you found your resolve. And I think it's very important that this is done by people that are very prominent in our societies and communities. And looking at you being a reverend, you are a prominent person in our society. You are a religious leader, and people do look up to you. So thank you very much for sharing this story. I think just a key takeout, you mentioned that COVID has perpetrated these issues that we have in society. You were talking about bank accounts being on minus and sometimes on zero. And I mean, this is happening to people that are breadwinners within their families. You know, you spoke about, you know, the traditional masculine traits that we have, you know, which is men want to, it's strength and control. And by virtue of you losing your job, by virtue of you not being able to provide for your family, now that masculinity is taken away from you. You've got no strength, you've got no control. And therefore you rely on yourself and not seek help from others. So I think it's very important that, you know, we do not only speak openly, but to those that we speak to, they do listen, and they listen with the intention to build and to heal, as opposed to listening, you know, to destroy. So, and thank you very much. And I think maybe just before we go or move on to our next speaker from the panel, I think we as a people, we as a community, we as a society, we need to look deep down in ourselves and say, or rather ask the question, for the people that we call friends, for the people that we call family, you know, our peers and everyone around us, can we unequivocally say that we do know how they are doing, we do know what their state of mind is? And that does not just happen without communicating and trying to find out and reaching out to find out how people are doing. we get consumed in our daily lives every day, so much so that we even forget about our families, the people we live with. So I think this topic, this conversation, is then going to make us do a self-introspection in trying to make sure that do we show love, do we show compassion. Without further ado, I think siyabulela kakhulu enkosi. Mhlekazi uBonita uDalindyebo usilele. Selungile.
Sendilungile mhlekazi. Am I audible?
You are very much.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, good evening to the fellow panelists, to the BMF community. And also, yeah, I'd like to also take this opportunity just to thank the BMF leadership, because as a disclaimer, I'm still on the healing road. So I really appreciate this opportunity as well, just to share my story. Firstly, my name is Untitled Chapter. I'm based in Durban. I work for Transnet as one of the senior managers within the company. I'm also a PhD candidate at UKZN in the space of air quality science. So just to give you an overview, so as you can tell, I grew up with a royal family. So growing up, everything was normal. So I'll just title my story Uti the detours of life and how one should and how one deals with a loss. So I grew up in the royal family, normal family, and everything was perfect. I recall at some point in time when I was in high school, Kuti, I would hear friends talking about attending relative funerals, and for some reason, it was, I was not exposed to any form of funerals at home. People were so good that people were just living. Then I think towards 2003, we lost, and I was fairly towards the latter stages of high school at the time. We lost a close uncle of mine. Then on my final year, after my matric exams, I lost my granny, who was quite a pillar in my life. It didn't hit me at that time, there wasn't, I recall at the time, I think I just locked myself in my room for about a week or so, but afterwards, needed to go to varsity and, started getting ready, made certain life decisions that, I'll honor my granny's wishes, I'll go study geology. Certain things were based on the desires she had put in my life. I went through, completed that in time, and, everything seemed to be going well. Well, throughout that time, started also just losing other family members, and one would bottle up all of these losses. Then in 2018, I was married at that time. My wife and myself, we lost our baby, stillborn. I recall going to actually fetch my mother at the airport. I parked on the side and I just cried. But after the whole process, you get involved where now you're planning for a funeral for a baby you've never even held. You've just seen the dead baby. Life goes on. Then towards the end of 2018, and I'm sure by now you can recall, I was quite a mommy's boy. The inevitable happens. My mom passes on. That then changed the entire ballgame. The camel's back was now broken. And from one that had a fairly perfect life, And also throughout parallel to this, life was happening in corporate. I was just jumping ladders in corporate, getting awards, and I was just jumping the corporate ladder. And also in my studies, I was, growing from strength to strength with everything that had been bottled. I just kept going. But then my mom passes on. And I recall at the funeral where, because now I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I can't cry for too long. I recall at the funeral, as I was, particularly, I'm sure, well, we can all relate if you've been in a funeral where the box gets lowered. I think that's one of the most saddest moments. And yeah, when I cried, I was literally told, you can't cry for too long, you need to get going. And that's what also corporate required. You need to get back to work, get the targets going. And I needed to get things going, life had to go. But I was not coping, I was not coping because the one person that was my confidant outside my wife, she was not there anymore. And it took a lot of certain decisions that now went the other way, a lot of alcohol abuse, because that's how one would cope, and that's how one would cry as well, because that's when you're in that emotion and then you find yourself in that space. There's a lot of decisions that one, on hindsight, would not be repeated again, but it's a form of the space and darkness that you are in. However, one then had to find upliftment, as I think Uvuyo said at some point in time. Yeah, you now look at, you've got 2 kids, one gone 3, and you need to get things going, so I found that I needed to believe, you need to believe in something, and for me, being born in a Christian family, again, it was needed to find something to believe in, and also one of the things I've learned through this process, and things that you find as a boy child, as a man, even going through a situation, you don't get told to love yourself, to honor yourself, take care of yourself. The decisions you make based on just having a certain level of respect for yourself. So one had to get to that space, but love yourself at the same time, and look after yourself. Go to gym, run, read books. One had to go to certain hobbies, and I found that you're never too old to get back to that space of playing soccer with the guys again. It doesn't have to be sitting in a pub somewhere, and also I had to find my purpose again. As difficult as it was, I had to go back to the good days. Guti, what were the certain practices? What were the principles one had? I remember my wife would remind me a lot, Guti, who is this guy that I met? What principles did this guy have? That's what I'm saying. Sometimes life will detour you, but you need to go back. That's where I went. I had to find, Guti, what brought me to a certain level in life, even though I was not there anymore, or felt I was not there, but certain things that brought me there, lastly, as I finish, it's important to appreciate the good things that have happened in life. Life is difficult, as Reverend had said. After that, there was COVID, but there's been things that are good, and one needs to go back and just count their blessings one by one and start picking up on these good things. So that's my story for now. And as I said, as a disclaimer, one is still going through the process of healing and finding themselves in a better better state in every season that they are in. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. I think just maybe a question from my side for the audience. Having gone through these issues, you yourself personally, was it easy to find someone to talk to? That's one. Equally important to that, the people rather that you spoke to, did you find it to be a safe space for you? Because I know sometimes, in as much as you can find someone to speak to, but the question is this the right person that you're speaking to? I mean, we see this sometimes even you tell them something about yourself and then so did you find a safe space for you to be comfortable so that you can be able to share your story and thereby be in this journey of healing?
Thank you very much for that question. That was always the first difficult point, and I obviously tried going to a professional counseling at some point in time. That was the first point, but we had limited time, and I wasn't satisfied. Something else was missing. You're right. It was difficult going to Wabazalwane because you become judged. You become a talking prayer point, and sometimes it's not nice. So I didn't really get to a point where I found someone I would deal with on a daily basis. But my wife was that person. There's a friend of mine as well that I could offload a lot of things. But I'll be honest, you would find that one talks a lot under intoxication. So Fridays were the thing, Come Fridays, yes. The house is booming because Uted is gonna speak out, he's gonna speak out. I take my wife, sit in the garage, and after a few drinks, I'm getting a lot of things out. And I think that's
keep your camera on. Keep your camera on. Just one more question. I think you've touched a very important point here. You've spoken about your wife, and you can answer this in whichever way you want to answer it. How instrumental is your wife? I don't want to say has because you're still trying to find healing. How instrumental is your wife to your journey of healing? You just mentioned now that Nishala is in the garage and is going to start talking. So how instrumental has she been? And I'm asking this for everyone who's listening from the audience that is dealing with the same thing and having issues at home.
I think Dr. Sello touched on it earlier on. It becomes a communication thing, and that's how instrumental they become. It becomes a way of how to communicate with them, because I found at the time there were certain areas in my life where I was also breaking her because of the manner of communication. And these things, we also need to understand that, well, again, it's not particularly on any race or whatnot. When it's hard, it's easier, particularly when you are in a relationship, in either way you see it. You tend to find faults on your partner because it's the closest person to you, and it's one person that's easier to take the blame. So through the latter part of healing, I found that if communication was good initially, maybe the healing process would have been quicker with her around. So yeah, initially it wasn't good. It took a lot of strain, but through time and through certain counsel that one has received through the journey, she's become quite instrumental. Thank you.
Before we move on to Unazila Dr. Vuyo. I think I just want to mention, right, the people that have collaborated or rather the partners that have collaborated with BMF so that we can have this session today, Idwalalethu Foundation and the Sello Maake Foundation as well. So without further I say, Dr. Vuyo, can we have you on the floor, class?
Yeah, so yeah, let me unmute myself. Thank you, Randy. Let me just fix something. Okay, sorry, just a moment. Can you hear me from this side?
Audible to the deaf.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. So yeah, so the people that we are listening to here are, you know, even, you know, getting me goosebumps about. I mean, the first time we initiated these discussions, we just thought, I thought that I'm the only person who's got a story, and I'm realizing that the other stories cut deep, and also from Brasilo, the way he unpacked everything he did. Myself, I am a medical doctor, and my battle with depression was at a time when I was a clinical manager of a hospital, and that was back in Eastern Cape, right? And you know, at the time, you know, I started feeling some pervasive kind of a despondency, and that I really cannot touch my own feelings. I'm not even able to tell the next person what is happening. Now, you know, when there is that kind of pain, you tend to always want to numb the pain. That's the one of the things that everybody does. So really, Brasilo answered this to say that the alcoholism part becomes a symptom of something that is behind, that's brewing, that, you know, as men we're told that we cannot speak about it. Men, you know, real men don't cry. So that's one big beast that we are, you know, supposed to be tackling today. And you know, with these stories, we are hoping that other people can relate and say, like, listen, what I got from the Prince Dalinyebo is something that is happening in my life. What I got from Reverend Stephen Softly, that is something that is happening in my life. So with me, when I started feeling that I was going deep into depression, my being a doctor did not give me an upper hand in terms of saying, listen, I've got somebody that I can call. I know people that I can call, but I did not, you know, disclose. So it got me thinking to say that if then I am not able to go through to knock at the door of a colleague, then how difficult should it be for the next person who is not in the field of health like I am, to under the scourge of of society that tells you that, you know, like, how difficult will that person, you know, for him, how difficult will it be for him to actually approach me on the other side of the desk, if I cannot, you know, get my facts around, get myself to be sorted out with depression. So for me, man, what then happened was that alcoholism became the thing. I became, you know, a way to even start a conversation. I would have to have some whiskey. I'd have to go to conferences, and in the conference, I'll, you know, meet people and be proactive, kind of, so that I sort of mask what is happening, you know, beneath, so that I don't have a long discussion. Just greet them and then run. And then at the end of the day, when we need to have a bigger discussion, a longer discussion in the night, then I'll start and have whiskey. And so my life was now dependent on that. I became alcohol dependent, and being a doctor, right? And now, you know, what then happened was that my mother saw that something was not right, right? And she then, man, you know, came to my hospital unannounced. And, you know, and she says, listen, man, I called you over the weekend and we couldn't connect. And now she goes to my CEO. And when she gets to my CEO, she says, listen, something is not right here. And I'm sure you guys also can see. Now the issue is that it now is all of this is now creeping into my workspace, right? And I would not be that empathic to my patients, because then of course there's depression, or maybe I slept late, having taken quite a lot of alcohol, and now I'm babalazed, all of that kind of thing. So essentially then, when she told my CEO and had sentiments to say, listen, I am not prepared to have my son, lose my son under these circumstances. And only then did I start going to see somebody, a therapist. So essentially the issue has been disclosure in man, because of the societal heritages that we have inherited, that we Indodaikai. So for me, she came through and became a safe space. But on the day, I remember the day when we were supposed to drive, and my cousin was there to help me drive on that day, and because so depression can cause you to be so tired and drained and unengaging. So that day, I remember the hospital is very, very small. So perhaps then the word had grown that this gentleman is not coping, and then the mother has come to fetch him to help him through. Now I was a senior doctor there, and I was embarrassed, so embarrassed. But I thank the day, man. And in my mind, then I started what is an online kind of mental health awareness for men called Mindzone today, that is in partnership with very amazing people today, Sello Maake Foundation, Idwalalethu Foundation, BMF, and everybody who's here today. So really taking this, what we are going to be learning, into the next chapter of how then other people can learn from them. And Brasilo has alluded to the fact that in our partnership, even in fact, the creative arts now needs to take center stage into shaping a new culture that is going to kill the beast in Dodaikai. And so basically that was my story. And the fact that me being a doctor, I didn't have an upper hand in disclosing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what is going to happen for the next people? And Lwandile, this is the reason why we're here today, to get other people to relate to these stories that are being told here, so that they've got the courage, a better means to dig deep and be vulnerable, get some courage to say, I want to speak too. If Lwandile Balfo is the CEO of a recording company, I'm just reading what I'm getting, a billionaire-based company based, wherever it is based in the JSE, doing good. And if he can break down to talk about their story, then as well, I can do the same. And therefore it should be something fashionable. And we thank also BMF for this kind of space, man. So that is basically where I came from. And look where we are now, because I got the safe space, and that's what men need, right? To have somebody to speak to. And in my case, I was forced into that space, and it can be very difficult sometimes.
Thanks. If I hear you correctly, right? I know that by profession you're a medical doctor. And how can it be that, in the spaces that you are, you're very much in the know, even the people around you, are they not able to pick up these symptoms? Because these are people that are in the know, right? That's the assumption. And with that being said, exactly the point that you just alluded to just now, you have a person who is very defined and disconnected from the knowledge that you have, and the people that you have around you. Then, wouldn't you then say, if you yourself were not able to find help, even the people that should be in the know could not pick up these things, what does it mean then for that person who's completely disconnected as opposed to how you were? So, and then coupled with that, how did you then find your road to recovery to the person that you are today?
Yeah, there's a little bit of an echo, but I think I got the gist of the questioning. So I think the questioning is, if there's people around me, why do they not pick these spaces and become my safe space? I think that's the question. And
that's the question. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Lwandile, these things are complex, man. And to be a man and to be a leader, and people are going to assume that if they go into a space and break the fact that, dude, something is not right with you, and they think that they're juniors, then they think that, no, that's not their place to go to. And again, to break that kind of space to say, dude, you are going through a depression. And we know that society will already say that I am not coping, then that means I'm losing it, or I'm weak. And therefore someone is going to really watch their steps towards approaching me. I'm just thinking for the people who are around me. And I was also their senior, and perhaps it was going to be a bit of a difficult to hold, to say that, dude, let me sit down with you to do that. I think society also tells us that we cannot ask those questions, and therefore you know, I really would have you know, to thank what happened with my mother, because it can be difficult, it can be very complex. And you had a follow-up question, Ulwandile. Sorry, I'm just missing that question now. Lwandile?
Just if I'm going. You mentioned that I have an echo.
Yeah, the echo is getting a bit, it's worsening now. Yeah, I don't know if it is your audio system or your auditory system.
Can you hear me on your side?
Yes, now you're back. You're back, Lwandile, yeah.
You mentioned that I have an echo. Is that still the case?
No, it's not as terrible. It's
okay. And I think maybe you've touched on this as well. And I think just maybe you might not necessarily have the answer now, but I think I was speaking to a person that is completely disconnected, you know, to the information and the awareness and the knowledge that you and your peers had. A person also about who something up as Lalin who not have access to this information and knowledge. And I think that's the purpose of this conversation that we're having. You know, maybe just to add on my side, I mean, you could say Lali, you know, I grew up in the village, you know, exactly what you had mentioned earlier, that, you know, Kali, you know, the minute you start showing your emotions, weak, you know, for the that's how it is, you know, from where we come from. And these are the challenges that we are facing. And I think these are the things that lead us as men not to open up for fear of being deemed or dubbed weak. And therefore, would say, my fellow, you know. But thank you very much, for your story, and thank you for sharing with us. I think what we're going to move on to now, it's labeled on the agenda, silencing the beast. And I think this is for us all. So I'm going to go through the comments just to read, and then we can have all our panelists, you know, to take a step to what people are going to be writing and saying from the comments. And again, silencing the beast is basically how do we then break the narrative? You know, what are the things that we need to do so that we can get to a better place as a society in dealing with these issues? Because even though you've not been affected directly, but somehow you've been affected indirectly, and mental illness has got dire consequences. So this is why it is important that we go to delve deep and in trying to find an ecosystem. A sustainable ecosystem rather of how we can create awareness, how we can follow an individual's journey, you know, from home to work, to places of fun, you know, is there support throughout that journey for that individual? And if there isn't, what then should be there? If then there is or there are, what are those activities, you know, within those touch points? So I'm going to be reading from the comments now, and then any one of the panel members can take a step. I'll pick someone randomly. Just picking randomly on the comments, we need to take the reins, gentlemen. It's up to us to stand up for ourselves, each one, reach one, and lift them up. We need to create our own platforms to address our own issues. That's another comment. One of the comments says a father cannot trigger his own maintenance, meaning you cannot legally take care of your child with record. If your partner refuses, this is added to man's issues. We are human, just like everyone, and it is time we are seen as humans with emotions and mental health to be considered. So thank you for this. My last remark is let's love each other enough to take care of each other. And I think this speaks to what I was saying earlier. that we need to show love and compassion to one another. It might be that one, as Reverend Sophie mentioned and alluded earlier, that COVID, we got to situations where people were out of jobs, where people did not have any form of income, any salary coming in. So then, the disrespect would come from people. They lose their dignity because now, here you are, you're a person that was able to take care of your family, to provide for your family, but now you find yourself in a situation where you can't, So just moving on to one of the comments, I want to thank you all. I'm humbled. I work in a disability sector under the Autism Western Cape. I see the challenges so much. I believe together we can do events that trigger a movement of support. I'm honored to hear all these stories and I'm touched. I don't know if maybe one of my panel members wants to jump in and just maybe comment on what I've read from the comment section.
Thank you so much, Lwandile. I think for me, it's just to highlight that it's so sad, that when it comes to mental illness or mental health of men as a result of COVID-19, you don't see a specific focus on men. You only hear about men in relation to their perpetrating, of domestic violence and other effects on women. So it is portrayed as, of course, rightfully so, in that context. But that is the only context that we hear about, that men are violent, and the expression or the symptoms of what is going on in the minds of men. And I consider that very unfortunate, because there is a bigger rooted problem which need some sort of a gender or a gendered way of approach that specifically focuses on men. One other thing which I wanted to ask Dr. Vuyo is what I found comforting myself as a man, that I don't have to visit an institution, because technology has provided us with an opportunity to use technology to bridge the gap, because the stigma attached to visit an institution for intervention is what sometimes limits men to get help quicker. It becomes a stumbling block, because first thing that we have to overcome is the stigma of visiting an institution. But if technology can be so used that it can bridge that gap, and then men can download an app and can log on Zoom and be able to be assisted in the comfort of their own homes, in the comfort of their own living rooms, just a cell phone away. And that becomes something that can bridge the gap or between men and getting help. So that's just what I wanted to bring in there and highlight, Lwandile. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend. I'm looking at another very interesting question here. It says, how do we change the current narrative without causing an imbalance? There are many initiatives to support our women folks, but none to support us as men. I'm a father of two beautiful girls, and I would not want them to feel less important. However, I would want to give a boy child the same type of attention. Society teaches us to value girls more. Feminism plays a big role in this regard, and historical patriarchal practices have caused us to lose focus on the balance that we need to create. My question is, how do we find the balance so that we can raise a balanced society? And this is not for you or not, Reverend. I was just reading there, and it so happens that it was you that was speaking. And I think maybe Umpo can jump on as well in trying to address this one.
Maybe just before Umpo comes in, can I also just take a stand a little bit on that, because there's some
Sure.
yeah. So you know, it is very difficult. You know, we need to go in with our eyes wide open when we start discussing that man should also be, you know, given a rightful space to deal with their problems. Now, why I'm saying this is that when we are talking about gender issues, we sort of take a line, a rope, and then we polarize the issues. Then we think about femininity on the other side and patriarchy on the other side. So we ought to be very intentional that we don't want to fight those gender wars. What we're doing is, when we are having a man who is emotionally available, then that makes him to be able to say, come, my girl, let me give you a hug. Boy, I love you. So then when we're opening up a man who's emotionally available, then we are making a better world to a better child, a better daughter, a better son, and you know, a better man to their son and daughter, and also a better man to their partner, such that you then see the partner's mood or well-being getting better because we talked to a man, right? And I think that there's a connotation which says, if you teach a woman, and you teach the community, or you know, empower a woman, you empower the community. But I also find that if you empower a man for the first time, you're going to be empowering everybody to have confidence of being, because these boys who have fathers who are not emotionally available, right, get to be bullies. So it is, you know, I understand that you want to give emphasis to the boy child, right, without taking out, you know, without pulling on a string of patriarchy over the girl child. I think that when we look at a man, we are able to have a comprehensive look at the rest of the society. We don't have a broken man, then we don't have a toxic environment at the workspace. We don't have a broken man, then we have a happy wife. And maybe Lwandile as well on the there was okay, what Reverend was talking about. Reverend says that we need to close the gap. Oh, yes. We are at fault as clinicians because we are expecting to raise resources, and resources are psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatric hospitals. Then we sit on the other side of the desk and we are waiting for the men to come and knock at our doors. It is not going to happen. We are going to have this movement, and we are going to be, you know, partnering with corporates to shift the culture on the stigma, and also to tone down indoda ikhali. We are going to be successful over the years, but still, Reverend, I like your concept that why do we not use digital transformation to be able to be much more vulnerable, because it has happened for you. Now there's a concept that we are working on, a campaign we're working on, a project we're working on, and we look at the alternative other areas of accessing help, and we are saying virtual consultations. So I'm saying now to get to you to say that, listen, when men have issues and problems, where do they go? Or why aren't men visiting hospitals? Then you will answer me and say, they're in a bar, right? And in the bar, there's a bar lady. So I get there and I get my first shot, and I chat to her and say, listen, hey, by the way, I'm going through A, B, and C. She talks to me, you know, we chat. I don't know her. I'm comfortable speaking to her. And today I was in an Uber, and the gentleman, you know, I just talked to him to say, by the way, I'm going to be having lots of people to have this discussion about the difficulty in men coping. And he says, wow, that's a big one. Because here in my Uber, a lot of men come and then they cry because they don't know they don't know me. So they talk about everything and everything. So mostly, you know, it's easier to speak to a stranger. And now the concept where we get safer spaces to speak, we call it the check-in areas. What are the check-in areas that will substitute the clinic, the psychiatric ward or the clinic, So these are the check-in areas. Then the bar lady is a check-in area. And now once she gives you the second glass, then she says to you, oh, by the way, we've got a technology, not a technology, we've got a booth on just down the corridor. You get there, you click, and you get a psychologist who is going to speak to you. You don't have to show your face. So we are looking to employ such things because now we've got the technology. So that's a very great point, Reverend. And then other check-in areas, we're looking. I don't know if it's okay here, BMF, to mention people, companies that are around South Africa. I'm not really challenging them, but I'm just going to mention that they are available. So for an example, if I have Virgin Company Fitness Club, or let me just mention the club, Virgin Active or Planet Fitness, and that, where do people go? Men go, they go to the bar, they go to gym, and then they define their masculinity with being fit, and there's insurance companies that are already creating vitality on men or people getting fitter, wellness. And then there's one thing that they're missing the mental wellness. So now why then do we not infuse that space to be another check-in space where men say, listen, comprehensively, I'm already going to the gym. So it might be cool because it's a general trend to just go to a gym, and then I can take my emotional intelligence space there. The classes, we talk about emotional intelligence, and some people, we come as Mindzone, other people come and deliver that. And I understand that it is still, we are still talking now to the affluent and progressive societies. We still need to use everybody's inputs to see what do we do for the rural spaces. How do we make this a much more comfortable space? We think about other check-in points. Once we get this to the people, they will tell us what other check-in points are. So essentially that's the the input to. And thanks, Reverend, for that kind of thinking.
Thank you so much, Vuyo. And again, I think it speaks to what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that we need to find ourselves, or rather be positioned as such that we are able to follow the individual's journey, right? On a daily basis. You wake up from home, you go to work, from work you go to gym, from gym, you go have a beer or a drink, whatever the case, and then that's the journey that we need to follow. And that is where we need to have touch points within those areas, within those spaces where people go to, where they are predominantly spending their time. Without wasting any time, I think I've been trying to look at the comments, and I'm sorry, I can't read everyone's comment. We are also trying to watch the time, so I'm going to move over to Umpo. Now, with what has happened, the important part, which is sharing, sharing the stories, what people have gone through, what they've done. And I think it's equally important that it is matched by someone who's then going to show us and tell us as to what is that needs to be done, what are the what are the steps that one can take in trying to find healing. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Umpo to come on the floor.
Thank you very much, Lwandile. Thank you very much, Reverend Pumzile, and thank you very much, Vuyo, even Brasilo in absentia, and Lita. Look, in the conversation that we're having, I want us to identify something that is common, and it's very crucial. We can see amongst us here that majority of the storytellers were suffering from one mental illness called depression. That's one thing in common. You hear Vuyo, he'll tell you about depression. You hear Brasilo, he goes and tell you about depression. You go to Mr. Lita, he also tell you the same thing about depression, that I went through depression. Reverend, you also touched about issues related to depression as well. But let me tell you a story that you need to be able to understand, is that depression is a rising mental illness at the present moment as we are talking, now as we speak. Now, the issue about it is that now I want to bring the BMF into the picture so that you can understand why were we invited by the BMF in the first place? And why did they want to partner with you? And all those other partners that we joined with Dr. Vuyo and in other organizations that we formed for this particular webinar to happen. As the Black Management Forum, one thing that we always put up front is that we are a managerial leadership organization. That's number one. Now, it means we develop managers, we develop leaders so that they can be able to go out there and run the country. But the purpose of them running the country is because we want them to be the ones who are going to be the drivers of this economy of this particular country. That's one thing that BMF stands for. That we want to make sure that transformation happens at the higher level, one, which is great. Now, the economy of the country rely heavily on human capital for it to be able to move forward and grow. That's the South African model for the economy to grow. That's where we are at the present moment. Now, if we rely heavily on human capital, this is what happens in terms of statistics. The World Health Organization says it is estimated that by 2030, depression, which is one of the highest and one of the leading mental health illness, will become most burdensome illness in the whole country. Now, if it tells us that, it means we are in crisis. That some of and the statistics also tells us that 1 in 6 is probably being diagnosed with depression. What does it tell us? That we have a crisis where we are sitting, which is a ticking time bomb. That if we are not going to be taking care of our own human capital that drives this particular economy, we're gonna be in crisis. This particular economy may not grow with the level and the speed that we want. Now, this leads me to this. I heard the questions that a lot of people have been mentioning. Now, as a professional sitting sometimes in my office there are cases that we always find most of the time. And one thing that is very crucial, and which is what I want to appreciate, is this type of a webinar, where we specifically said we want to talk about men. Statistics says the level of suicide when it comes to men and women, men takes the cup at the present moment. And when you check in the area of Brazil, you can check so many that kills themselves at the present moment. And when you check what is the issue, most of the time it's because of the depression that is underlying there. There might be other mental illnesses, but mostly depression is the one that leads this particular issue. Now, there is one person who asked the question and say, how do I know that now where I am, now this is now a mental illness, I've crossed the line, or it's just a stress that will make me to snap out of it? The only time you will be able to realize that this thing is now a mental illness. Now, let's take what Vuyo has said. One, when it's now starting to affect your occupational functioning. So when we say your occupational functioning is most of the things which are mostly important in your life. One, your work. When you can't be able to go to work as you're supposed to, that's number one. Two, when you're supposed to do things that are hygiene, where it becomes very difficult for you to wake up just to go take a shower. It takes an energy. When you can't be able to eat well, because one, you need to eat so that you can have energy. Two, if you can't be able to sleep, you have a very nice house, but you can't be able to sleep simply because somehow you can't be able to wake up. Then you should know something is not right with you. That's when Vuyo will be able to tell you, and we think the alternative to numb this pain will be, let me go to the bar. Let me take a sip. And once I take a sip, maybe this will be able to help me. But remember, we are creating a secondary problem on top of the other one that we already have. Now we are creating alcoholism there, which one person also asked the question and said, how do we deal with alcohol? How can I come to a point where I'm saying, I want to leave this thing? How do I go around it? One, let me tell you what the ingredients very quickly. One, it means you need to realize that number one, you need to have a willing spirit to quit. So when you don't have the willing spirit to quit, to say, I want to leave this thing because I can see it's now taking me astray. So you need to have the willing spirit to quit. That's number one. Secondly, you need to also understand that you need to set goals and prepare for those changes. To say, I want to see myself by this day, by this month, by this year, that I'm not going to find myself drinking anymore. You need to also set realistic goals to say, do I want to lessen for now as I'm working towards to quit? The other third thing is to say, cut back or quit alcohol. It's up to you. You need to choose. Do I want to cut back? Do I want to quit this particular alcohol? You need to set those goals and they need to be very realistic. So the fourth one will be, now, there are lots of options in terms of alcohol. I'm touching there and there because I've listened to other things that I thought are very crucial. Now, the issues of alcohol in terms of treatment, there are lots of options when it comes to it. One, you can choose. Do I want to be a residential, do I want to submit myself into the residential treatment? They call them normally rehabilitation centers. Do I want to submit myself there? Secondly, you can also choose the partial hospitalization where you partially go there and then you come back. The other one can be intensive outpatient program. The other one can be the therapy one where you come and consult with people like us and the other ones who are trained, psychologists, registered counselors, you name them, different social workers and all that, so that you can be able to see whether you can be able to have progress moving forward. That's one of the other aspects. But something that is very crucial that also that Sello has touched, which I want to touch as we are coming to solution, is the issue of stigma. Now, men are egocentric generally. We like our egos to be brushed. And because we want our egos to be brushed, so somehow men do not want to be embarrassed. Now, the issue, what Dr. Vuyo has mentioned of the issues that it is very difficult for a man just to go and see a GP, a general practitioner. A man generally goes to a general practitioner when they see that this thing really kills them. So you can imagine when we're talking about mental health issues that sometimes they don't even have physical symptoms. So by themselves, it means it make a man to say to themselves, look, I don't see a need to go and see someone else. So we want an alternative that is very conducive for us, that won't be able to embarrass us, is not going to crush my ego. So one option will be what Dr. Vuyo has mentioned now, to say, what is it that we can do to try to make sure that we keep the ego of a man, but we still be able to attend to them and help them as much as we need to help them. So obviously, we need to sit down as the BMF and also all the partners to come up with the strategies to how can we be able to roll out whatever it is that we are coming up with. Now, the DP and the Deputy President of BMF attended one of our seminars where we were talking about promotion of mental health. We have started that already in Limpopo. We have rolled that, and we can agree now in this particular webinar that this webinar is not enough. We can't have this webinar and it ends here. It means it needs to be a movement that we need to be able to have it regularly, because one, somehow our country has a problem with mental health illnesses. So somehow we need to deal with it because there's a crisis. If we don't take care of the mental health illnesses, we will have a problem with our economy growing. We might not be able to find all the jobs that we need. At the present moment, there are so many people lost their jobs due to COVID-19. There are so many people in terms of unemployment. You can imagine how many people and how many boys who are unemployed, who will be employed. And sometimes when they go and be employed, they get employed already with a mental illness, and you have to deal with it as a manager. So somehow we need to be able to bridge the gap as to how we can be able to resolve this, but it needs to be a movement and we need to go out there in the community. Now, the other aspect that is very crucial that I wanted us to talk about is the issue of stigma about mental health illness. I would do injustice if I'm not talking about this thing and dwell a little bit on it. Look, the stigma around mental health poses a major stumbling block when it comes to treating the disease in South Africa. We are a very cultural country. And because we are a very cultural country, there are certain things like we are saying, into taikali, monna halle, monna ollela kamohare. So when we have those things, we grow up with them. And somehow, let me tell you something that you are not aware of now. Is there someone amongst us here who can tell me what is depression in any African language? I'm going to tell you now, there is not even a single word from our African language that describes or that says this is depression. And you know what does it mean? It simply means when you have depression, somehow there is that thing where the society discriminates you. So somehow people look at you as weak in the community that we're living in. Hence, lots of men will never come to a psychologist and walk straight to an office of a psychologist. They will hide their cars behind because they don't want to be seen attending the psychology. Because one, the community is saying, you are crazy when you have depression. We don't accept it as one of the illnesses of strong people like men. So because we don't accept it as a strong illness like men, so it makes you look like you are weak because it doesn't have physical symptoms as usual, as sometimes. Although it might lead to some of the physical symptoms when we're talking about psychosomatic disorders, maybe Dr. Vuyo will be able to identify, where sometimes you have this particular depression that leads to headache, sometimes it can lead to pains in your neck and in your spine, and sometimes somewhere in your body where it leads to that. Sometimes it even leads to stroke and stuff like that. It is because somehow this particular mental illness has reached to a point where it becomes a physical symptom. But majority of it, because it's a silent sickness, lots of people die because of this particular thing because they can't be able to talk about it. So the issue of the stigma that the African culture is really telling us to say, we don't know and we don't even have the treatment about this. When a person says, I have depression, or when a person goes and attends to any other professional, we are labeling them as they are crazy. And because you are crazy, somehow nobody wants to be identified as crazy because it deals with your ego, it embarrasses you as a man. You must always remember that aspect. So somehow we need to find a way. And one of the ways that we're going to find are those ones that Dr. Vuyo has already mentioned. He spoke to me before this particular webinar to say, how can we be able to expand it and roll it? We make it less painful and in a safer place that a man can be able to come and be able to vent. That's number one. Secondly, be able to keep his own ego without him knowing that he's going to be embarrassed somehow by being able to talk about this particular issue. We know there are those who've got courage, but there are a whole lot who don't have courage to come and say to people, I have a depression. People are scared to say about, I've got a mental illness because one, they are afraid that they'll be discriminated at work. They can be fired. Others may be telling the truth. There are others who are fired because they have mental illness. Others are discriminated against. They take you from the position that you were in. They no longer trust you somehow because they tend to think when you have, maybe you have an anxiety disorder, you have a panic disorder, or maybe you have a depression, somehow you don't deserve to do certain type of work because your mind suddenly can't even think clearly because somehow you're crazy. So this particular stigma thing, we really need to deal with it. We can't really leave it like that. And the only way to deal with it is with awareness. Now, the solution to this, and I'm glad that Dr. Vuyo mentioned something in the beginning, to say, we are putting a disclaimer. Now, the reason for the disclaimer was that, one, people were going to hear the stories of other people. Now, this is what happens. When you hear the stories of other people, the traumas that they went through and the problems that they went through, in most cases, you become a secondary victim. You become secondary traumatized, if you get what I'm trying to say. So it means when you become secondary traumatized, that there is that thing where this thing triggers certain things that were inside you, that somehow you never knew how to handle them. So that is one aspect that he needed to make a disclaimer from the beginning, so that we know that there might be certain things that are going to be evoked in your emotions. And those things, when they're evoked, we are going to make ourselves available. That's number one, in terms of coming with a solution. We are going to make ourselves available that you can give us a call and we can direct you to other professionals so that they can be able to attend you when it comes to that. Because as we are talking, people are self-diagnosing. So when you start self-diagnosing, you start to check to say, but I think I have this. I think I can't be able to sleep well. I think I have this issue of the stigma. I think I can't be able to. So once you start doing that, we call that is self-diagnosing. And that is one thing that you should always remember, that will be at the end of this particular webinar to assist you in terms of, they'll share the numbers that we can be able to assist you, to direct you to relevant people who can be able to assist you further moving forward. As I'm about to end this particular issue, there was an issue of the road to healing that we have raised to say, how do you go to the road of healing when you're an individual and you find yourself in this particular stage? Especially now, because we are sending an awareness. So when we are doing an awareness, somehow unless if your situation is so severe that you can't be able to be assisted with other coping mechanisms that I'm about to give you now. So one thing that you can do to try by all means that your mental health becomes okay is to talk about this, your issues that you have. Now, there's a narrative that men can talk, right? Which I believe, but I believe it entirely, because men can talk and majority of men can talk. And sometimes they meet and they talk. And when they talk, they sometimes talk about things that has to do with soccer, cars, and money and careers, where they want to go, girls and whatever it is. Men talk about so many things. But the difference is that lots of men do not talk about their pain. They don't talk about what affects them. They don't talk about what is important that makes them. They don't talk about my car is about to be repossessed. My house is about to be repossessed. They don't talk about I'm about to divorce my wife. They don't talk about issues that I have. I was diagnosed with a chronic disease. I have HIV and AIDS. I don't know what to do with myself. They don't talk about I'm about to lose my job. They don't talk about I'm broke, you know, like they were mentioning here, the viewer was mentioning, and also Lita was also mentioning. They want to drink so that they can be able to talk. When there's no drink, somehow they tend to think, I can't talk about this because they are very embarrassing. So somehow men talk, but they don't talk about the relevant things that deals with the pain that they have. So we need to encourage them, create a safer space that is not going to make their egos to be bruised. The safer space that will make them to be able to talk about things that makes them to worry, that makes them to be stressed, that makes them to be depressed. Because once they start to do that, that is the road for recovery and healing. Once you start talking about your things, then the level of stress is now reduced bit by bit. And that is the only way you can be able to talk, you can be able to reduce the stress level that you have. That's the number one issue. The second thing, it means you need to find someone who can be able to talk to. And sometimes it might not necessarily be a therapist, but to go to a therapist is also helpful. But you should also understand, like the Reverend has mentioned, not all therapists, is it Lita will mention, not all therapists will be able to understand your position where you are. It's like when you're having a GP, there are those GPs that you would go to, and when you come back, you're like, I'm gonna go back there. But there are those that you would go because of their training and because of their experience will be able to attend to your issues. Similarly with therapists, you go to this one, you realize they don't help you, you can also pass and go to another one. But the issue is sometimes you can talk to your wife, like they have mentioned. They can talk to your wife, and they can talk to a friend that you can trust. But the issue is to encourage men to talk. Men must talk as much as possible, but not talk about things which are useless. Like I'm putting a disclaimer, they need to learn to talk about things that are paining them, things that makes them to want to kill themselves. There's a situation that I normally use as a case study that Black Coffee said, Ricky Rick wanted to talk to me. He was alive of the party before that particular night. He was alive of the party, but at that night he sent me a message and said, I want to talk to you. But the following day when he says, hey, let's talk, my brother, he could not be able to talk anymore because they don't want to talk about things that pain them. So those are the things that we need to encourage our men, that let's start talking about things that makes us not to sleep, that makes us to be worried. We need to start talking about that. The other thing that is very crucial, the exercise they've already touched. Men needs to go start exercising 30 minutes a day, every day, just to walk. It assists in terms of making your mental health to whatever. You need to understand how the brain operates. The brain itself, because I'm touching so many things at the same time. The brain operates, it has neurons in it. Dr. Sello mentioned that there are other mental illnesses that are hereditary. And sometimes you can even inherit depression. For those who are not aware, you can inherit depression. So somehow there are neurons that are working in your brain. Those particular neurons that are moving, that are working in your brain, they need to activate the hormone called dopamine and serotonin. Those hormones are the most important hormones in terms of making sure that you are happy, in terms of making sure that your libido is up as men, in terms of making sure that you can be able to sleep well. That is the hormones that help you to eat. That is the hormones that are able to make you to have the rewards. So those hormones are very crucial. Somehow we need to always activate them. So when a person is depressed, it means those hormones are low. They can't be able to be secreted as they're supposed to be secreted. Now, this is how we help them in terms of our mental health all the time. It means we need to try by all means to exercise, and at least 30 minutes on a daily basis. Secondly, we need to check our diet. What do we eat? It means we don't have to eat simply because we want to be full, but we must eat because we want our brain to eat, we want our body to eat. It means it must be a balanced diet. That will be able to assist us in terms of, there's some, I'm not sure who spoke, who said we need to have gratitude. It means we need to be able to be thankful. Now, here is the exercise that we normally give when somebody has issues with mental health, to say, at least have 3 things that you say for 1 week that you are thankful about. Don't repeat them. So it means if you're saying, I'm thankful about my life, I'm thankful about my family, I'm thankful about my job. Tomorrow, don't say the same thing. Say something else. Look for something else. You will start to realize that there are so many things that you can be thankful about that will make you not to be able to give up about life. So that is one of the other exercises that people can start doing from now on. Celebrate your achievement. We have a problem these days as men. We don't celebrate our achievement. Personally, I had a problem of celebrating my birthday. I wanted to take it as one of those other ordinary days, but it's not supposed to be like that. You need to celebrate it. Once you start celebrating and becoming happy, force yourself to be happy. You are activating those hormones that I've mentioned, and that will help you in terms of your mental health promotion. That's one thing you should also keep the happy memories. You need to always keep your happy memories. There are so many things that you have done in your life that made you happy. Sometimes keep those memories. And once you are down and whatever, pull one and pull it here. Look at the picture and it will remind you. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's friends that you used to have, but keep those happy memories. That will be able to assist you in terms of whatever. Secondly, we are living in the world where like we are saying, technology and people are always, because they are managers, they're always in buildings. I gave in one of the seminars, I gave an example and I said, people stay in nice houses. So they will stay in a house that has a garage, inside, that has a garage, and the cars are in their garage. When they are going for their routine in terms of going to work, they take a bath and they get inside the car through the garage door, and they get inside the car and they drive the car outside, and then they go in the basement of the building and they park it, and they get out and they go to the office, work until they get into the car, the same routine until they park and they go home and they sleep. Now, we are encouraging people to now get out more. That's one thing that you should. Once you start getting out more, what we need fresh air. Secondly, we need nature. We need that air that you need to get that is fresh. We also need sun. We need the sun. The sun is to heat your body somehow so that it can be able to activate those hormones that I've mentioned when I was talking about these things. So those are the things that will be able to assist us in terms of making sure that we try to make our mental health as men, that it should always be in the right platform all the time. So as BMF, we are going to be able to sit here. We've already started in Limpopo, the drive. We've started with the drive. We've already said we set up the meetings with the MEC of Health. The reason for us to do that is that we want to form the partnership. So Limpopo has already started. The Limpopo department has already started, number one, with the issue that they are rolling out the mental health program. So it is in 2 forms. Number one, they are catering the, what do you call this? They are catering their frontliners in the hospital. So those that they can see that they might have problems with mental health, they are targeting that. The second one is the one that they're focusing on the community. So we are focusing on the workforce. So we want to go and form the partnership with them so that we can be able to focus on the people who are very crucial, who are drivers of this particular economy. I spoke to you about it, that we need to be able to sit down so that at the end of the day, this needs to be a nationwide drive, and where we end up going to talk to the Minister of Health, that we can see how can we be able to assist moving forward. With this morning and awaits, I was rushing quickly so that, because I'm checking at the time, that we should not be that late when it comes to with our issues. I'm going to take this time and give it to you back, Lwandi. And if there are other questions in terms of how can we be able to assist, we'll be able to assist them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to switch on my camera here, but I seem to be struggling. But anyway, I will talk while I'm trying to do that. I think the overriding message that we need to echo from what you have just said now is that men do not talk, men do not speak. And it is very important for us to be able to get to these issues. We need to have these conversations. Now, this is twofold. You've got people that are aware that they've got these issues, and you've got people that are not aware that they have these issues. And it needs us around them to be able to pick up these symptoms, to pick up these little things so that we can become support to them. And even when they do finally find the time to speak, when they do find the courage to speak, we do need to have that fertile ear that is going to be able to listen with the intention to build, so that the person can start with a healing journey. You were saying that men do not want to speak, and I've got a person who's speaking now on the comment section. And listen to this. I was diagnosed with depression around 2016, and now going through a difficult time of divorce. I think it is taking me back to depression. It is taking me back to depression. I'm scared of losing my wife, my kids that I love so much. I'm so tired. I don't know what to do, but I'm really tired. I just want to go, but what is going to happen to my girls? Now, this is what we're encouraging, right? And it's happening right as we speak, that people must speak. So I don't know how we're going to deal with this, but I think we need to reach out to I see Reverend Sophie has responded to Mweke in saying thank you for your courage. What you just did now takes a lot of courage to do. This shows that here is still more. They show that there's still more in you that you can think you are at the right place. Please take my number. Okay, he has given his number to him. Okay, so that is sorted. And I don't know if maybe you want to touch on that, but maybe before I let you give you the mic again, we have run out of time. The set time was 8 o'clock closure, but I'm going to hand over to Vuyo after your closing comment, so that Vuyo can just give us a brief summary of what today was about, and then therefore Siya Mesiya Kusoma, he was the chairperson of the BMF in the Sanctuary City branch, to close for us. Thank you.
Are you saying I should come in, or you saying?
Yeah, I would love for you to just share a brief comment in relation to what I've just read now.
Let me just be brief, because the person who just said that is why we had to say the disclaimer. I would love that that particular person take our contact and talk to us after this particular webinar immediately. Don't delay it. Just talk to us after this particular webinar and give us a call. I think who's the guy will be able to give you my contacts so that we can be able to direct. So let me screen first, and after screening, we can be able to send to the relevant person. It doesn't matter in which country, because I know we've got people who are not even who are outside the country who are also part of this webinar and stuff, and other provinces. Let that particular person give us a call, and I think we can take it further from there. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. And I think we do have the contact details, so we'll sort that in that regard. And I'm going to hand over to you, Vuyo, so that we can sum up today.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very quick one. And maybe to start, I'm just going to say that this session was about what Mweke Sello has that he's gotten courage to talk to us. So that's what we're doing, storytelling and getting back the people to start talking, because this Indo-Daikani was designed not by us. And again, even the spaces of health that are not proactive were not designed by us. We just inherited it. And so today, Dr. Sello gave a very beautiful space and storytelling and relatability and encouragement from his legendary and his presence really stimulated us to think. And as such, the storytelling after that was over this world, and we learned quite a lot from all of the speakers. And then I understand that we've gotten quite a lot of input and insights from our panel, from our audience, and that's what we were about. And thank you so much for the the concepts that you are giving us. And Tumelo Dishabe talks about as one of the audience talks about modern day safe spaces. And when I started talking about check-ins, you know, these are the concepts that we will take from these discussions. And so thank you so much, Dumelo. And again, the other one thing Mweketsi is you know, when he makes his message there, he says, "I am tired." So that's another symptom. When somebody says I'm tired, they really mean something. There's a clue. So that's that ear we need to have it. So again, to make this conversation to come to pass, I'd really want to say that in summary, the collaboration from Idwala, who are very Idwalalethu Foundation, are very instrumental in creating events. Sello Maake Foundation, who is helping us to differentiate from how we are doing things, and that we put out the red tapes and plug out the red tapes, and you know, stop working now in silos. And Mindzone as well as one of the key partners into getting this initiation to pass. And you know, more than anything, also BMF has been instrumental in having this space to even take it and spill over from just this conversation, because in our follow-ups we have quite a lot of offering for our audiences, which are going to be much more larger. And he's alluded that we are going to be speaking to also the Minister of Health. So going forward, we have now a greater space, and BMF also talking to the fact that depression is going to take out or wipe out our human capital, right? If we look at it in that angle, then we know that we don't have a progressive country at all, and therefore the basic conditions of employment need to incorporate these discussions, and also the health care sector needs to disrupt, and also now through storytelling, which is going to be in succession, we are really hoping to get more people who relate, and therefore as a result, we have more people being able to speak out, and that function of end goal was well articulated, and we have, even from the audience, and we can allude that we have touched our goal. And thank you so much, Lwandile, for helping us to facilitate this session, and thanks to the panelists, and thanks to the partners as well.
Thank you very much. And I think to BMF, Mindzone, Idwalalethu Foundation, and the Sello Maake Foundation, to the panelists that we had today, and the people that joined in, you know, from all corners. I think this would not have been possible without any of these people that I've just mentioned now. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you that they've set their time aside. It's a Friday evening after work. People are tired. It's been a very heavy week for some of us, but they still made time to join us today, and thank you very much for that. I have a person who is designated for what I'm doing. I should not be doing this, but I have Umhlekazi Uqai, who's the chairperson of the BMF Central City branch. He's going to be doing the closing. So over to you, Sir Uqai.
Thank you, Mr. Powerful. Mine is going to be very short, just to be cognizant of time. When the BMF was thinking of partnering in these sessions, we knew that there was a need for a session like this. But I just have goosebumps today, looking at what is happening and listening to people's stories. And I know that, you know, we have opened up a can of worms. And I think we're going to need everyone who's here to pull through. We keep this fire burning. I think, because I was watching numbers of how many people are here. This session has managed to keep people glued in, listening throughout. And for me, that shows that there is a need for these conversations, then we must keep them going. But my job today is just to thank everybody, to thank our panelists, the level of vulnerability that they carried, what was needed. I think you guys did justice to mental health awareness. I want to thank Brasilo for his time and sharing and his energy. And I know he's very busy, but he made time for us. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mfundisi, for your time. We also in the BMF have a women empowerment desk. It would be interesting to partner in a lot of activities, so we will keep in touch. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Ulita for your time, for sharing your story. Very insightful. When you were talking, I just drew up something when you said finding purpose again. So I think that would be something that's the running theme to my mind. Dr. Yogwe, again, thank you. Thank you so much. Very instrumental in partnering with us, Mindzone. I want to thank you people that organized this. They are in the background, Idwalalethu. They've been the people that were connecting everything in the background. Idwalalethu Foundation, thank you very much to you. I want to thank everybody that joined the panel. Thank you. Let's keep it again. So this is not going to be the last session. So these must keep going. It's very important. And I just want to give a call to corporates and professionals that are within our spaces. Please encourage them to, support these initiatives. The next panel will be someone that was in the, joining in. We need people that are influential in the health space to help us. With those few words, I want to thank you, everybody. And yes, until the next time.
Thank you very much, Sonabile. I think there's a question that has come up so many times on the comment section before I close. I don't know who's at liberty to address that question, but the question is the video for this session, will it be available? If it is available, will it be available? Where is it going to be available? So are people or can people have access to this content?
It is recorded. I think people that I think we can make it. I'm not going to commit, but I think we can make it available because we have it. It's recorded, and they can contact the BMF office.
Now, the other thing as well, just to get in terms of the availability, it's also going to go on BMF YouTube, so they get access to it on BMF YouTube. So people need to go to the BMF YouTube and they'll be able to download it. What you need to do is just to verify when is it going to go there, and then you can notify them that they can be able to access it there.
Perfect. That's clear.
Thank you.
I think this is the end of our session. We did say thank you, and Ukai has thanked everyone that has taken part and the people that have joined. And thank you very much. And this is where we say goodbye to everyone. A very good weekend. Enjoy time out with the families. And please be encouraged to speak up about issues that are affecting us in our communities and our society at large. Thank you very much.